you're tuning into something different, something deeper. Welcome to a space where the unseen becomes seen, where the patterns beneath reality are decoded. This isn't just a podcast, it's a journey into the mechanics of belief, perception, and the multidimensional truths shaping our world. If you've ever felt like an outsider looking in, questioning the systems you're told to follow, you're in the right place. This is The Outcast, the Pattern Podcast. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the deep dive. You've decided to spend some of your precious time with us, and our goal is simple.
Yeah, we want to take these complex ideas, often kind of buried in dense articles and research.
Right, and pull out the truly vital insights. Think of this as your express route to becoming well-informed.
With hopefully a few of those satisfying aha moments along the way for you.
So today, we're embarking on a really fascinating exploration. It's based on an article titled The Interloper War Between Worldviews and Realities.
It's a piece that really makes you think deeply about something fundamental. Right.
It really lays out how these fundamental belief systems, they aren't just abstract ideals floating around.
No, not at all.
They're like the bedrock we build our lives on, make decisions, figure out right and wrong.
Yeah.
So if you've ever wondered about that hidden architecture of our shared reality, you're definitely in the right place.
That's a really good way to frame it. The Interloper digs deep into this idea of a worldview as a foundational system.
Foundational, okay.
Yeah, for us as individuals and, for whole societies too. It's way more than just a set of opinions.
Right.
It's a deeply ingrained framework that actually informs our identity. The text really hammers this home. It's fundamental to who you are individually and as a society.
Wow.
And it creates this powerful sense of belonging. It doesn't really matter if you're in the dominant belief system or, maybe a smaller one.
Okay, so it's tied right into who we are. And importantly, this isn't something fixed, is it? The text says a worldview is not static.
Exactly. It's active.
It's actively working, it organizes, and at times controls reality. That sounds pretty significant. Like our beliefs aren't just reflecting the world, they're like shaping it.
Precisely. That's the fascinating part, this dynamic interplay. Worldviews aren't just passive filters we look through. They actively structure how we perceive everything. And the text points out, for a worldview to keep its hold, well, it requires everything from you.
Everything.
Like our constant participation, our agreement, even if it's unspoken. What the text calls our consensus. That's what makes it observable, what makes it feel like the established reality.
Consensus. Okay, that makes me think of the Big Brother example used in the text. Can you unpack that a bit? How does that show the power of shared belief?
Sure. So the Interloper uses that idea of constant surveillance, like Big Brother, to show how this perceived need to conform pops up within a worldview.
Ah, right, that pressure.
Yeah, you feel this pressure to line up your thoughts, your actions with the projected belief system, just so that worldview stays dominant. The text basically argues worldviews are constructed by way of consensus.
So they only work if enough people buy in.
Exactly. They only have power because a whole lot of people actively believe in them and act accordingly.
It's almost like we're all, actors in these different scripted worldviews or narratives, as the source calls them.
Multiple ones, often.
And these scripts, these narratives, because they're designed to keep the worldview going, maybe they aren't giving us the full picture.
That's exactly the point. These narratives, these scripted worldviews, they color in a picture of which you may not be able to see fully because you're not meant to see it fully. So it suggests our understanding is kind of inevitably shaped, maybe even limited, by the main belief systems we're swimming in. It can obscure other ways of seeing things, a broader view.
And there's this built-in pressure to accept these scripts, isn't there? That fear of being, an outsider.
Definitely.
The text says a worldview is meant to make you feel that if you do not have a worldview or if you do not take part in it, that you are on the outside or you are a person who does not belong. That's a pretty strong push to conform.
It really is. And these scripts for belonging, they're often tied to what you can contribute to keeping that worldview alive.
Ah, so it's like a transaction.
In a way. It creates this interdependence. Your participation props up the worldview, and in return, it gives you that sense of community, identity, purpose, but only within its rules, its boundaries.
Okay, so on one side, worldviews give us a framework, maybe some ready-made answers to the big questions, but there's a catch, right? The text says they also constrict reality to give some illusion of control. How does that work, that limitation?
Right. By offering those preset answers and established ways of thinking, worldviews naturally limit what we even consider possible, or, what's even thinkable.
So they narrow the field.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The interloper links wanting a different life directly
Yeah.
to wishing for a whole new reality,
Yeah.
and people who actively look for other ways to live who don't quite fit the mold,
Yeah.
they often get seen as interlopers. That's the term the text uses, those who don't belong to the main worldview.
And these worldviews, they're not just ideas in our heads, are they? They can have a really deep, pervasive influence. The text calls them a type of system that can flood the nature of the mind, body, soul, and spirit, control the mind, body, soul, and spirit. That sounds incredibly deep.
It is. It's suggesting a really profound level of influence.
Yeah.
The text makes a point of distinguishing between just, knowing what a worldview says
Oh, okay.
and the actual amount of energy you experience investing in it.
Ah, the investment.
Right. The more deeply we engage, the more we internalize it, the more it shapes our thoughts, feelings, even our basic sense of who we are.
Now, here's where the interloper brings in something really fascinating. It says worldviews are patterned in the way it is manufactured or even seeded by impressions of the image. What on earth does it mean by image here?
Yeah, that's a key concept. The text explains that the importance of the image is really an allegory or metaphor of the principle of creation.
Creation itself.
Kind of. It suggests that creation in its deeper essence requires an image to impress upon. So therefore, all forms in the world become known as realms or realities through these underlying patterns or impressions.
So like a blueprint, a foundational idea that shapes how that worldview sees reality.
Exactly. Think of it like that, a foundational blueprint that shapes how a specific worldview understands and interprets different bits of reality.
Okay, so we've got this underlying blueprint shaping things within a worldview. And to kind of navigate these powerful forces and keep our balance psychologically, the text really highlights the role of objective inner consciousness.
Yes, the constant thought of inner consciousness is described as the anchor, the thing that holds the psyche together.
So an internal awareness.
Precisely. Cultivating that sense of self inside, one that isn't just defined by whatever the dominant worldview is telling you from the outside.
Which leads straight into why self-knowledge is so crucial. The interloper really emphasizes this. It is important to organize your sense of self, to know yourself. Why is knowing yourself so vital here when dealing with these worldviews?
Well, the text argues that the more you focus on who you are and honor your own uniqueness within obvious reasoning morally, the less you become affected or impacted by the worldviews or narratives that shape the scripts for the world to believe in.
So knowing yourself makes you less susceptible.
Essentially, yes. Self-knowledge here is framed as a kind of self-empowerment. It leads towards absolute sovereign control over the mind, body, soul, and spirit. It's like having a really strong internal compass that doesn't get easily messed up by external magnets,
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Developing that inner compass acts like a buffer. And the text links this to things like stoicism and mindfulness. How do they help build this self-knowledge regarding worldviews?
By really understanding ourselves, like our core values, our deepest beliefs, maybe our own inner wisdom, we get much better at seeing how worldviews actually operate.
Okay.
We can see them for what they are, these constructed belief systems, not some kind of absolute truth. And that awareness lets us engage with them more consciously, less reactively. We can make informed choices instead of just, soaking up the narratives.
And just the act of questioning them, these worldviews, that has an effect too, right? This affects a worldview, the very fact that you're questioning it. It's like throwing a wrench in the works.
Kinda, yeah. The more you question the worldviews, the more you break away from worldview consensus.
Yeah.
The interloper actually calls this process gaining wisdom out of knowledge.
Wisdom out of knowledge.
Yeah, describing it as priceless and perhaps even eternal. It suggests that real, lasting understanding comes from actively looking at these frameworks we usually just take for granted.
But questioning like that often meets resistance, doesn't it? The text talks about great fears and also subconscious terror that can bubble up when a worldview's basic structures get challenged. Why such a strong reaction?
Well, because these worldviews often represent a huge investment for people. The text uses this metaphor of kingdoms in which they have invested in with blood, sweat, and bags of money.
Great, a lot is at stake.
Exactly. So any questioning of the core beliefs can feel like a direct attack on the whole system and on the identities people have built on it. It challenges that perceived order, that stability.
So the point of questioning isn't just to stir things up. According to the text, it's aiming for something much deeper. to waken up the consciousness, to remember your own revival, to urge you to wake up from the slumber of controlling mechanisms. That's a really powerful framing, like an awakening.
It absolutely reframes it. Questioning becomes this vital step towards more self-awareness, freeing yourself from limiting beliefs. It's about getting beyond what the text calls the knockoff gemstones of cheap forms of egregores. Yeah, those collective thought patterns that can have a really strong, often unconscious hold on us.
Got it. The Interloper then states that worldviews dominate collective humanity, and anyone who kind of sparks or wakes up is often seen as controversial, faces pushback. It even mentions wars being fought over these things.
Yeah, it really underlines the immense power these belief systems have over societies. And it highlights the potential for, well, serious conflict when these systems collide.
It's a heavy thought.
It is. But the text is careful to say its goal isn't to stir up conflict, but rather to spur the spirit to reach to higher awareness. The main thing is facilitating that internal awakening.
Which could then ripple outwards.
Yeah, exactly. Potentially challenging existing social structures, which, yes, can lead to friction.
Going back a bit, where do these big pervasive worldviews even come from? The text points to historical roots in spirituality and the idea of cosmogony and teleology for man. Can you break that down?
Sure. For ages, worldviews have been tangled up with how we understand the universe, cosmogony, theories about where everything came from.
Right, origins.
And teleology, our sense of purpose within that universe, what's the ultimate goal or endpoint. These big ideas have historically given us the framework for how societies form, what their values are, what they're trying to achieve.
And fundamentally, the power of any worldview seems to boil down to collective agreement, doesn't it? The text says, all creation in this realm requires the focus on having to give a consensus to certain ideologies, which are all built from within the mind or the mental foundations.
Absolutely. It puts forward this really compelling principle. If more than 65% of humanity agrees on a type of worldview, then it means that that particular worldview becomes a reality for those who believe in it.
Wow, 65%. That really highlights how much shared belief shapes our actual experience of reality.
It does. It's all about that mental consensus.
The text then briefly touches on different fields: science, philosophy, metaphysics, even shamanism, esoterica.
Right, its foundational influences on thought.
And it singles out metaphysics as a potentially useful lens, but with a big if.
Yes, metaphysics is presented as offering maybe a perfect lens to see it, but only if you have the discipline to question the beliefs that surround you.
Back to questioning again.
Always back to questioning.
Yeah.
And the text also reminds us, the answers have always been within you for life's big questions. And it flags human consciousness itself as a key battlefield in how we understand things today.
Okay, to make this less abstract, some examples of current worldviews. Can you run through those?
Sure. First, it talks about the materialistic or mineral worldview. Says it's pretty dominant globally.
Okay.
Based on modern science, often has atheism as its militant spear point. Focuses mainly on the physical world. Tends to put humans at the top intellectually, often leaving out spirit or soul.
Got it. Then there's the spiritual worldview.
Right. That one's grounded in what the text calls spiritual science.
Right.
Things like anthroposophy, theosophy, hermetics, esoteric Christianity, that sort of thing. It generally includes a belief in a spiritual dimension beyond just the material.
Makes sense. And the third one was the fundamentalistic religious worldview. How does that look?
Yeah, this is where religious doctrine heavily influences society, often more than scientific explanations.
Interesting. And the Interloper also points out that people often have a mix of views, right? It's not always clear-cut categories.
That's a really important point. The whole worldview question gets tangled up with personal beliefs, religion, the state, just practical life. It's actually rare for someone to fit neatly into just one box.
Right.
You might meet someone who operates mostly in a materialistic way but isn't, a hardcore atheist.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone spiritual who still fully engages with the material world. It's usually a blend.
The text ends on a pretty sobering note, though. The difference in worldview and belief system is, of all ages, polarizing and historically underlying prosecution and wars.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder, isn't it? How much impact our basic beliefs have had throughout history and how often differences there have led to division and, sadly, conflict.
So wrapping up this deep dive into the Interloper, we've really unpacked how these worldviews we live in are constructed and how powerful their influence is on how we see and interact with everything. It really drives home how vital self-knowledge is and that practice of critical questioning. They seem like essential tools for navigating all the different narratives flying around. We hope this exploration gave you a clearer picture of the forces shaping your world. Maybe sparked some thought about your own underlying beliefs.
Yeah, and what's really provocative, I think, is to consider how could being more aware of your own core beliefs and the dominant worldviews around you actually empower you? Empower you to maybe more consciously shape your own reality, engage with the world with more clarity, more intention.
Absolutely. It's a lot to think about. And for those of you who found this dive into worldviews interesting and maybe want to explore these ideas more, we are actually working on a full course and building a website about it. We'll go into much more detail there.
Yeah, really dig in.
So if this stuff resonates with you, if you'd like to know more when it's ready, maybe just give us a thumbs up below. Let us know you're interested. Thanks for joining us for this exploration.